Hari Om, Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Sadashiva Samharambham, Shankaracharya Madhyamam, Asmadacharya Paryantam, Vande Guru-Paramparam. Namaskara to all. A warm welcome to yet another session of Global Festival of Oneness. We are celebrating Adi Guru Shankaracharya for a whole month by organizing and listening to various talks on his contribution to Sanatana Dharma. The journey so far has been very interesting and very enriching. We've had some very impressive line of speakers. Today we have Swami Tattwamayananda ji, and he's going to speak on topic Jagan Mithyatvam-The Advaita doctrine that Jagat is Mithya. We are very blessed by your presence, and my humble pranams to you, Swamiji. A brief introduction about Swamiji. He is currently the minister in charge of the Vedanta Society of Northern California, San Francisco. Swamiji has served in various centers of the Ramakrishna order in India as editor, publisher, and teacher of Sanskrit and Indian philosophy before coming to United States in the January of 2012. He had a traditional training in Hindu scriptures, Sanskrit, and Vedic literature from his early days. Swamiji is teaching Vedantic texts such as Sri Shankara commentaries on the Prasthanatrayam and Indian philosophy. A welcome once again, and over to you, Swamiji.
Thank you so much, and thank you for giving me the chance to address all of you once again after one long year. And I also compliment all of you for taking up this very holy task of remembering Adi Shankaracharya and his contributions. Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha Sudhismriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Yairime Gurubhi Purvam Padavakya Pramanataha Vyakhyada Sarvavedanta Stanityam Pranatosmyaham. So the subject before me is one of the most profound, one of the most well-known topics in the entire system of Indian philosophical tradition. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Napara. Slokardhena Pravakshami Yaduktam Gandhagodibihi Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Napara. This statement actually sums up the highest peak of humanity's spiritual and philosophical evolution. Advaita Vedanta tells us that there is one absolute eternal reality which is unchanging, which is omnipresent, which is omnipotent, transcendental, and immanent. It is Sarvantaryami, Sarvavyapi, and Sarvatita, Trikala Abadhita, Avasthatraya Abadhita, Shadvikaratita. It is the only reality that can be termed Satyam. It is Abadhita. This is the central principle of Advaita. Then what about the world in which we are living? What about different human and non-human beings that inhabit this world? This world is not absolutely unreal, but it is not absolutely real. Only that alone can be called Satyam or Nityam, that is absolutely real, if it remains the same for all times, in all conditions, in all states of awareness. And there is nothing in this cosmos that can qualify for this distinction. So This world is only reality. It is absolute reality for a person who is not spiritually enlightened, who is not aware, who is not acquainted with the teachings of Advaita. And for a inquisitive person, let's say for a philosopher, maybe for somebody like a Plato or even Einstein, any person who is a seeker of truth, whether in philosophy or in modern science, this world is inexplicable. It is mysterious. It is something that we actually do know everything about. We know something, but it is certainly not everything. And for the enlightened one, for a Shankaracharya, for a Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, or for any spiritually enlightened person, this world is Mithya. So the word Mithya, as I mentioned earlier, does not mean absolutely unreal. It only means that which is not absolutely real, but it is experienced at the empirical level in the name of name and form. But when we get out of this world of ignorance, when we become spiritually enlightened, then we immediately understand that this world is actually unreal. Unreal in the sense it is not absolutely real. This is a central principle of Advaita Vedanta. Now, as I mentioned, there are many misunderstandings about Advaita Vedanta, mostly because people try to understand this as an intellectual construction. Advaita is actually a matter of our own inner experience. Shankaracharya himself makes this point, Srutya, Yuktya, Swanubhutya. So according to Advaita, Anubhuti or Anubhava, Aparoksha Anubhuti, that is the ultimate criterion for the realization of this Advaitic truth. And when we realize this, then we understand, except Brahman, which is the only absolute reality, everything else is only relative or unreal. In fact, one of the unique contributions of Advaita to world thought, to the heritage of world thought, is the gradation of reality according to our perception and comprehension. The highest reality, the only reality, it's called Paramatic Satya, is Brahman, which is Shadvikaratida, Avastatraya Abadida, Avastatraya Dida, Abadida, and so on. We call Sarva Pramana Adida, Sarva Pramana Avadhi, as we call in the Bhashya tradition. Now, in the Mandukya Upanishad says, Nanda Prakyam, the Bagish Prakyam, Ubhayada Prakyam, Na Prakyanaganam, Na Prakyam, Na Aprakyam, Adrishyam, Avyavaharyam, Agrahyam, Alakshanam, Achindyam, Avyapadesyam, Ekatma Pratyasaram, Prapanchopashamam, Shandam, Sivam, Advaitam, Tadurtham Manyande, Sa Atma, Sa Vigneha. So this Atman, this absolute reality, what you call Satyam in Advaita tradition, it is to be known, not in the sense of empirical knowledge. We have to realize this as our own true identity. Now, in the Advaita dialectical tradition, they call it Vivartavada. I mean, how do we reconcile with the reality of our experience of this empirical world around us, which we cannot deny, which we are a part of, in which we live, and this idea of the absolute reality, which we cannot empirically experience. The absolute reality can only be experienced as our own real nature. Yes, Sakshat, Abrakshat, Brahma, it's our own nature. It cannot be empirically known using the mind and the five senses of perception, like the world is known. So Vedantis will tell you that this Brahman appears to have become this world this Mithya world of names and forms. Just as a piece of gold has become golden ornaments, a pile of clay has become a number of different pots and pans made of clay. Really speaking, suppose there is a pot standing in front of you, it's called khata. If you break it, it goes back to its clay form. And before it was made into a pot. It was clay only. The pot maker used skills to turn clay into a clay pot. So the clay pot, when it is sitting in front of you, then also actually it is only clay. Only you have superimposed the form of a clay pot, and therefore the name, the clay pot, on that raw material called upadana karana, the clay. Like that, this world, when it is devoid of names and forms and causation, then it is non-distinct from Brahman. Just as a golden ornament cannot be different from gold out of which it is made, so also a golden pot cannot be anything other than the raw material of which it's made. Let's say a clay pot has to remain clay only, even when it takes a different form. Similarly, in all the three stages, really speaking, it is only clay, it is only gold. The golden ornaments are always gold, even when you are wearing it on your neck. And a golden cup, maybe a clay cup, a clay pot is only clay, even when you are storing water in a jar made of clay. That this is one of the 5 definitions of Mithyatvam according to post-Shankarite Advaitins, beginning with Padmapada Acharya in the Panchapadika, Sadasattana-adhikaranatvam Mithyatvam, that is Anirvachaniyada, indescribability, non-definability. And also in the later Advaitins, like Prakashatmayadi, who wrote Panchapadika Vivaranam, Prasannobhado, Sarva Traikaliga, Neshedha Pradiyogitvam Va Mithyatvam. And also his own definition, which we are going to discuss elaborately in the coming few, maybe 45 minutes. So also, Jnana Nivartyatvam, when you actually realize the truth, what disappears is the unreal, the false. When you realize the reality through jnanam, then ajnanam or ignorance goes away. When the light comes, what disappears is naturally darkness. So there are certain definitions which were actually analyzed by Madhusudana Saraswati in Advaita Siddhi. He takes all these definitions from the post-Shankarite Advaitis like Padmapada, then Prakashatmayadi, then Chitsukacharya from the Tupadipika, and also from Nyaya Deepavali of Anandabodha, and then Madhusudana in his unique dialectical work, which is one of the most profound works on Advaita philosophy during the post-Shankarite period. He analyzes Mithyatvam and establishes all the definitions and views which are put forward by Padmapada, Prakashatmayadi, and Chitsukacharya, and of course Anandabodha and others. We will discuss that later. Now, Advaitins believe in what is known as the Satkaryavada, which essentially means the effect pre-exists in cause. Like that, for example, let us say the clay pot is the effect. The clay pot, the pot pre-exists in the clay. That is Upadana Karanam. And through Nimitta Karanam, Sahakari Karanam, through so many other mechanisms, the clay turned into clay pot. Similarly, a piece of cloth pre-exists in the thread out of which the piece of cloth is made. The golden ornaments they pre-exist in the gold because the effect pre-exists in cause. The Satkaryavada has got two streams. One is Parinamavada, which is taken by Ramanuja and Sankhya, Yoga, all these philosophers. They follow in the doctrine of real transformation of cause into effect. But Advaitins believe that the cause really doesn't become the effect. It only appears to have become the effect. For example, if you remove all the gold from a golden ornament, you won't get golden ornament any longer. You try to remove all the thread from your cloth, there'll be no cloth. That means your cloth is nothing but the threads which have taken a particular configuration. So in reality, that transformation is only apparent, so it's called Vivartavada. In the Sarvajnana Muni, in some Shivla Shariraka, he defines this. Vivartavadasya Purabhumihi, Vedantavade Parinamavadaha, Vivastidesmin Parinamavade, Soyam Samayadi Vivartavadaha. You may think at the beginning that the threads, the Tantavaha, have become the cloth, or you may perhaps think that this clay has become, the mud has become the pot. But so you may perhaps believe wrongly that it is parinama, but when you analyze this parinama, then you understand it is not real transformation, not real parinama, it is only apparent transformation. So they take up this Vivartavada idea, means this Jagat is nothing but names and forms, namas and rupas, and all of the other related elements superimposed upon Brahman. A Jivan Mukta can look at this world of multiplicity. He won't be seeing multiplicity. He will be seeing this world as non-different, non-distinct from Brahman, just as maybe a goldsmith who's selling golden ornaments in his jewelry shop. He may value the quality, maybe the price of his golden ornaments only on the condition of the quality of the gold out of which these ornaments are made. So he may be looking at these golden ornaments, but he's actually seeing only the gold. Similarly, a Jivan Mukta Brahmajnani, he may live in this world, but for him, this world of Nama and Rupa doesn't exist. World exists only as something non-distinct from Brahman. World as Nama Rupa is unreal. The world as non-distinct from Brahman is real, just like the Disapabhandi. So a person who has brought the light into the room, who has seen that the piece of the rope, the piece of that twisted thing that is lying on the floor, when it is not a snake, when he realizes that it is not a snake as he previously thought, because when he has brought the light, it's clear that it is not snake. So like he may continue seeing the same object which he misunderstood earlier to be the snake, but now he may be looking at it, but he will be seeing only the rope. It's not Jaladhara, Bhuchidra, or Danda, or anything. It is only the rope. Similarly, Jivan Mukta realizes the Mithyatvam of this Jagat. And now remember, when we are within this prison house of Jagat, we call Maya. Maya is the functional dimension of Mithyatvam. Mithyatvam or Mithya can be considered to be a word used by Shankaracharya to explain this strange, inexplicable mystery of Brahman, eternal Brahman, appearing to have become this non-eternal Namarupatmakam Jagat. But Maya, and in its form Adhyasa or Avidya, is a functional dimension of Mithyatvam. This idea was developed by various scholars during the post-Shankarite times. The number is very long. Sriharsha, then Chitsugacharya, of course later Madhusudana, before him Vidyaranya, then Sarvajñatma Munis, Prakashatman, Prakashatma Yedi. Prakashatman was another author who actually was responsible for the interesting theory of Drishti Srishti Vada. It's called Siddhanta Muktavali, Prakashananda. He lived around 15th and 16th century. In fact, one reason why many people developed a lot of misunderstandings about Advaita, saying that Advaita concept is some kind of a world negating, it is kind of an illusionary philosophy, which is totally idealistic without any element of realism. One important reason for this misconception was this Drishti Srishtivada, which was put forward by Prakashananda in the 15th and 16th century, not Prakashatmayati, who was actually a much greater philosopher. As a dialectician and as a Advaitin, Prakashatmayati, who was the author of Panchapadika Vivarana, was a far greater Vedantin than Prakashananda, who came much later, who was responsible in his work, Vedanta Siddhanta Muktavali, who expounded this interesting theory of Drishti Srishtivada, which says that creation exists only so long as there is perception. And that means it is only a mental construction. It seems that he developed this theory, Prakashananda developed this theory to defend Advaita, because during the 13th, 14th, maybe 15th centuries, especially during the dialectical warfare between Dvaita philosophers like Vyasa Tirtha, Vadi Tirtha, Jayatirtha, and others. Of course, Madhvacharya also involved, and Advaitins. Frequently, Advaita was termed to be some kind of dry idealism, world-negating idealism, or a kind of Dvaita pretending to be Advaita. For example, if you accept Brahman as the only reality, then why should you at all talk about Maya? So it amounts to some kind of a dualism. So in order to defend Advaita, Prakashananda put forward this theory that Drishya Prapancha is only a perception. It exists only when we perceive it. Anyway, there's a different subject, but it's important for us to remember when we discuss these Mithyatvam definitions we are going to do very soon. We have to remember many of the original ideas of Mithyatvam and definitions of Mithyatvam given by Panchapadikakara, that is Padmapada, and Vivaranakara, Prakashatmayati, and Chitsugacharya, and Tattva-Pratipika, and Anandabhuta, and others. They were perhaps twisted a bit, and a lot of misunderstandings evolved, mostly thanks to there may be a wrong interpretation of Prakashananda's Siddhanta Muktavali, which is a different matter. Anyway, along this line, though not directly related to this, three schools of Advaita also emerged in course of time. That is the Vivarana Prasthana, which has again followed the tradition of Padmapada and Prakashatmayati's Panchapada Vivarana and so on. And Sureshwara's tradition is called Vartika Prasthana, which more or less merged with regard to their projection of the Shabda Parokshvada. And in contrast to this, a different school, Bhamadi Prasthana, which follows the tradition of Vajaspati Misra, who wrote the well-known dialectical Advaitic text just after Shankaracharya. It's called Bhamadi Tika, which is a commentary on some of the Brahma Sutra, Bhashya of Shankaracharya. So I want to take up some of these definitions put forward by Padmapada, Prakashatmayati, and Chitsugacharya, and Anandabodha. Now, the first definition of Mithyatvam. It is from Padmapada Acharya, from Panchapatika. According to him, Sat Asat Anadhigaranatturupam Anirvachitvam Mithyatvam. So Anirvachitvam is Mithyatvam. I mean, non-definability, indescribability, something that cannot be defined or explained. This is his definition. Maybe this is very similar to the definition of Maya by Shankaracharya himself in the Vivekachudamani. Sannapya sannapya bhyatmigano, bhinnapya bhinnapya bhyatmigano, sangapya asankapya bhyatmigano, mahadbhuta anirvachini rupa. So the last pada of this sloka, mahadbhuta anirvachini rupa. It is the great wonder, the great mystery, which cannot be defined or explained and understood empirically, because Maya is the functional aspect of Mithya. So long as we are within Maya or Mithya, we will think, we are likely to imagine that's the only thing that exists. The world is the only reality that exists. That's the only ontological reality that exists. But through sadhana satushte sampatti, nitya nitya vastu viveka, ihamutra bhagavaka viraga, samadhi sampatti, mumukshuttam, and sravana, manana, and nidhyasa. When a person gets out of this trap of Maya, philosophically termed as Mithyatvam, then we are out of it. So why should we talk about something which is unreal? A question is frequently put forward by Western translators, Western academics, who may suffer from some of the problems of not going through traditional training of Advaita text under a teacher as part of Parampara. Parampara is very, very important. Keeping close to lineage is very crucial to understand the fundamental teachings of Advaita Vedanta. It's almost like a password. Unless you have the password, you cannot open a computer. So the question arises, and I would like to discuss this because this is frequently a question that's being discussed in many philosophical works published in Western countries. If the world is Mithya, then why should we talk about it? We normally do not talk about something which is really non-existent. Now, it is not Western others. Even when you read the Sapta Anubhavati-vada, the well-known dialectical work of Ramanuja tradition, then also you find that the concept of avidya, Maya, and Mithyatvam were not properly understood by even the Ramanuja philosophers. And of course, even Madhva philosophers, Madhva Vyasa himself, he interpreted Atatvamasi, the opposite of Advaita interpretation of Chandogya statement in the 6th chapter of Chandogya Upanishad. You find Tattvamasi Mahavaki Vijaraitadat Nimitam Satyam Satma Tattvamasi Shetakito. So according to Dvaita interpretation, it is Atattvamasi. So anyway, that's a different subject. So the question arises, we don't normally discuss things which is totally unreal. Now, in the gradation of realities in Vedanta, we should keep this in mind. Paramatic Satya is Sadvikara Atida, Jayade, Asti, Varthade, Viparinamade, Apakshiyade, Vinashyate. Something that is born, exists, grows, evolves, decays, and dies out or disappears. 6 changes. Now, Brahman is beyond all these 6 changes. Brahman doesn't come into existence because Brahman is not born, it doesn't originate, because there is never a time when it doesn't exist. So origination of birth is a transition from a state of empirical non-existence into a state of empirical existence. And also, it doesn't die, because there is never a time when Brahman doesn't exist. So it is Sadvikara Atita. And it is perceived without any change. Avasthatraya Abadida in the Jagra Sukna Sushupta Avastha. So Brahman is Atman, is perceived and recognized to be unchanged. So also in the three Trigala Abadida, in the three states of time. And it is not caused by anything. Now, the point is, frequently, they are not able to understand the real interpretation of Vyavaharika Satta. Next, after Paramatic Satya, Vyavaharika Satya, which is the empirical world, the world in which we are living. In fact, I'm now sitting here close to San Francisco, the bay, the mountains, the roads, and the sky, all this. We cannot say they are unreal in the absolute sense, because we are seeing in front of us. But we cannot say they are real, because after half an hour, the sky will be dark. After 1,000,000 years, this world will be different. Maybe 1,000,000 years ago, this world was different. 1,000,000 years later, it will be different. Everything is in a flux, is changing. So what is changing is not unreal in the absolute sense, but not real in the absolute sense, because to qualify to the status of Paramatic of absolute reality, it should remain unchanged. This is Vyavaharika Satya. Below there is Pradibhasika Satya, maybe some conceptual realities. When you mistake a rope for a snake, the snake is not totally unreal. You have seen the snake the previous day in a zoo, or maybe in the forest, and the Smriti Rupa, that Smriti, the memory, is superimposed on the object that you see in front of you in the room which is not properly lit. This is in semi-darkness. So the piece of rope lying in the room reminds you of the snake that you saw in the forest yesterday, because the same color, maybe same shape, looks like the snake that you saw yesterday in the zoo. So that memory is superimposed. So it is not absolutely unreal, but the snake is not there in the room. It is only a piece of rope. Now, at the last stage, we have asat, something that you cannot even imagine to exist. Even the term itself contradicts its existence. Gandharva Nagara, Vandhya Putra. These terms are obviously unreal. These things are such things. If it is Vandhya, it cannot be Vandhya Putra. If it is city Nagara, then it cannot be Gandharva. It cannot be Gandharva Nagara. It's a city in the sky, or the son of a barren woman, or the horns of a hare, Sasavishana. Even as an idea, it cannot exist. So very often in modern times, and I think this problem really happened to Dvaidin academics, including Vyasa and others, also Vaishnavas, and also many modern thinkers, they mistake Vyavaharika Satta for Asat. So they are not able to understand the true implication of Mithyatvam. This problem always exists in modern times. That's why Padmapada says, Sat Asat Anadhigaranattaruvam Anirvachittum, not being the locus of either reality or unreality. I mean, this Mithya Jagat is not absolutely real. So you are attributing, you impose its existence on this Namarupa Jagat. It is not absolutely unreal because it appears to be there, but it is not absolutely real because the world, everything, including our own body, changes all the time. Therefore, it is anirvajaniya. So this is an important point to remember. Now, if you want to get a clear picture of its implication, Shankaracharya writes in the Mandukya Bhashya, one of the most graphic description, one of the most authentic description of the concept of creation in Advaita literature. In the Mandukya Bhashya, he says, for example, Srishti, Jagat, says, Vibhudi Vistara Ishwarasya Srishtiridi Srishti Chindaha Manyanti Nadu Paramartha Chindaganam Srishtu Adara Ityartha. So, different views of Srishti existed, which Gaudapada in Gaudapada Kariga gives a list of different schools of philosophers who had different views of creation of this world. Vibhudi was one of the aspects, like different views of creation. So Shankaracharya says, but those who know that Srishti is, the Jagat itself is not absolutely real, they have no interest in this. So he said, then the picture is given, Indro Maya Vipraduvayede, etc. Naki Maya Vinam Sutram Akashe Nikshipya, Tena Sayudham Arukhya, Chakshud Gocharadam Atitya, Yudhena Khandasa Chinnam, Padidam, Panukhidam Chapasyadam, Takrita Maya, the Sadatta Chindayam Adro Bhavati. No Bhavati, that's the meaning. Tathaeva, Ayam Maya Vinaga, Sutra Prasarana Samaha, Susupta Supna Divikasaha, the Aruda Maya Visamascha, Tatsada Prajna Dejasadi, Sutra Aruda Bhya, Anyaha Paramartha Mayavi. So, Sutra Aruda Bhyam Anyaha Paramartha Mayavi. So, a magician is coming to a king's court. Actually, the old Indian rope analogy stories are found in many travelers' books also. The old Indian rope. A magician comes to a court and he's asked by the king to do some performance, and he throws a thread or rope to the sky. Then he climbs. He claims to be climbing to the heavens because he has received a request to come to heaven and help the angels, the devas, in their fight against demons. Then after some time, they hear the clash of sound, the clash of people fighting, and bodies are cut into pieces, falling down, and people falsely, wrongly believe that there's a war going on in the heavens, etc. And then he says, Sutra Arudhabhyam Anyaga Paramartha Mayavi. The real Mayavi, the real magician is not climbing to the skies through the rope. He's standing there without doing anything. Sa eva bhumishto maya channaga adrishyamana eva sthido yadha tatha turiyakyam paramartha tattvam. So actually all these are happening, and the whole world, everything that happens in this world is more or less like the performance of the magician who claims to climb to the heavens and actively get involved in some kind of fighting activities. Now, this is an interesting concept of creation. The viewers, the onlookers, are seeing all this happening, but they understand that it is only an illusion. Remember, illusion is not absolutely unreal. Illusion is not a vacuum. Illusion is something that you believe to be real. So, Mithya. Mithya is only something that you perceive to be different from what actually it is. When you perceive this world, the Mithya Jagat, and you think this Jagat is real, it's only because you see this Jagat to be something other than what it actually is. It is nothing but Brahman appearing in the form of this Nama Rupatmakam Jagat. When you look at Brahman through the prism, the glasses of names and forms and causations, you see this world. When you become a Jivan Mukta, then you are like the magician who's standing there at the court in the middle of the hall without doing anything, but only the onlookers are deluded into thinking that is climbing, throwing a rope and is climbing and going to the sky and so on. Like that, when we get out of this Maya, Mithyatvam, then we understand that it is only Mithya. But so long as we are within it, we won't be able to understand it is unreal. But Vedanta tradition tells you that you should develop sadhana dadushta sambatti, nitya nitya vastu viveka, igamutra bhravo viviraka, samadhi sakam sambatti, mumukshuttum, the sravana, manana, gradually nididhyasana and so on. When this happens, and also along with karma yoga, Shankaracharya himself says, karma nishthayaha chitta siddhidvarena purushartha hetutum na swadandrena jnana nisthadu swadandrena purushartha hetuhu anyan apeksha. When we practice karma yoga, when we practice unselfishness, pure life, pure thought, what we call yamas and niyamas in yoga tradition, or samadhi sambatti, or sadhana dushtaya in Vedantic tradition, then we reach a level of mental purity, and then we realize that this world, this Jagat that we are living in, of which we are a part, is actually only changing phenomenon. But it is only a matter of experience. It is not an intellectual construct. So that's an important point to remember. That's why, the word Jagat itself comes from the dhatu gama. Gama means to move, to go, and so on. Now, again, another important point to remember, that is again in this context, Shankaracharya did not totally deny the empirical reality, the relative reality of this Jagat. That's why he takes great pains to contradict many of the views put forward by Vijnanavadins and Shunyavadins in the Brahma Sutra Bhasha itself. The second definition of Mithyatvam, which Madhusudana in his Advaita Siddhi refers to, which he defends and establishes in his response to, in his reply to Nyayamrita of Vyasa Tirtha. He said historically it's important intellectual encounter between the greatest Dvaita dialectician and maybe one of the greatest post-Shankarite dialecticians of Advaita tradition. The second definition is, that's also very important, Pratibhanno badho traikalika nisheda pradiyogittam va mithyatvam. I mean, the world of multiplicity is eternally traikalika nisheda pradiyogittam. Eternally in the past, present, and future, bhuta, vartamana, bhavi, in Brahman. So multiplicity is negated on the very object in which it is found to be existing, so long as we are within the realm of avidya. So neka nanasti kinchana, this is a Upanishad vakyam that is taken as a pramana. This was put forward by Prakash Mayedi in Panchapadika Vivaranam, which is actually an important book belonging to the Vivarana Prasthana. So Pratibhanno badho traigale nisheda prayogitam va mithyatvam. The third definition is jnana nivartyatvam mithyatvam. Jnana nivartyatvam. When you get knowledge, then something disappears. What is contradicted by knowledge? Then what happens? The illusory cognition, the wrong ignorance is sublated, and when light comes, if somebody goes away, that somebody should be darkness. When knowledge comes, when something disappears, that something should be ignorance. Now, we have to remember, as I mentioned earlier, in the second definition, Prakashatma, it says, what is eternally negated in the same locus. So it's almost like this, you superimpose sarpa buddhi, sarpatvam in Rajju, and when you bring light on the same object, sarpa buddhi is negated. So it's not that the sarpa or snake was there, then it went away, it ran away, not at all. When you bring light on the very object on which you superimposed, because there is not enough light, sarpa buddhi, you thought the rope was a snake. Now the snake idea disappears on the same locus. Pratipanno badho traikalika nishedha pratiyogitvam mithyatvam. This is the view of Prakashatman. Of course, here something very interesting is Shankaracharya. In fact, at this very point, in the Brahma Sutra, there's a very famous statement. He says, when he refutes Bhakti Prapanja's view, Shankaracharya makes a very important statement in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya. He says, Nanu anegatmagam Brahma yadha vruksho aneka shakha evam aneka shakti pravrutti yuktam Brahma ata egattum nanattum chubhayamapi satyameva yadha vruksha iti egattum shakha iti cha nanattum yadha cha samudratmana egattum phena tarangadyatmana nanattum yadha cha mrudatmana egattum ghada sharavadhyatmana nanattum tatra ekamshatvena jnana moksha vyavahara seti nanatvam senatu karmakandasya laugika vidika vyavaharu setsyati iti evancha mridadi drishtanta anurupa bhavishanti iti. Actually, Shankaracharya here projects a Purva Paksha from the perspective of Bhakti Prabanja, who was a Jnana Karma Samuchayavadi. Before he emphasizes the idea of Neha Nanastik Injana, something similar to this. He says, Bhakti Prapanja's view is, we can accept Nanatvam and also Ekatvam. For example, as a tree, it is Ekatvam. But when you look at these different branches and leaves and so on, there is Nanatvam. Similarly, as an ocean, Samudratmana Ekatvam, it's one. But there are waves and there are different movements of water which create the illusion that ocean is throwing up different objects, foams and waves and tsunamis and so on. So we can accept both egattum and also nanattum. So this is the view of Bhakti Prabanja. His view is projected as a Purva Paksha by Shankaracharya in his Brahma Sutra Bhashya. When Bhashyakara replies, it cannot be so. Na evam siyat. Mrityage teva satyam idi pragati matrasya drishtante satyatva avadharana. So Bhashyakara quotes the famous words from Chandogya in the Tattvamasi Mahavakya. Of course, it comes the early part before Tattvamasi Upadesha comes for the first time only in 9th Khanda. That continues up to 16th Khanda. But the early part of the 6th chapter of Chandogya Upanishad, this comes Mrityage teva satyam. That is, you may have a number of pots and pans, different utensils made of mrit, of mud or clay. But actually, everything is non-distinct and non-different from mrit or clay. That is the only reality. So all the waves and foams and tsunamis are nothing but the same water, which in one state look calm and quiet like an ocean. In another state, it has become turbulent, tsunamis, waves, and foams. Nachavat the vacharambana shabdena cha vigarajadasya anudatva abhidanad tashtantike api aidadatmimidam sarvam tasatyam iti cha paramagaranasya eva ekasya satyatva avadharanad sa atma tattvamasi shedagedo iti cha sharirasya brahma bhavopadesha. So Bhashyakara explained this. Everything is non-distinct and different from the same reality. So, defending the Upanishadic statement, Nehana Nasti Kinchana, you can find these two definitions of Mithyatvam is defined. Again, in the third definition, as I mentioned, Jnana Nivartyatvam, that's again the Pramana Vakya is, Vidwan Namarupa Vimuktaha, means when a person gets Vidya, Jnanam, then Nivartyatvam, he gets liberation from ignorance, from the this Jagat Satya Buddhi, from the wrong notion that Jagat is Satyam. One gets liberated from that wrong notion and realizes the fact that Jagat is only Mithya. The fourth definition is from Chitsukacharya, that is from Tattvapadipika. Swasraya nishtha atyanta bhava prayogitvam mithyatvam. That is the fourth definition. The locus of which is equally the locus of its eternal negation. So, where you found it more or less similar to some of the earlier definitions. So, you have, you thought there is something there, but on the very locus is negation takes place. The locus of which is equally the locus of eternal negation. Where you actually thought something exists, on the very spot, its absence, its negation takes place. So, of course, Madhusudana actually modifies this. So, Atyanta Bhava Dhigarane Eva Priti Manattum Va Mithyatvam. Madhusudana modifies this. It's a different subject now. Now we'll come to the last and the most important definition. In some ways, some dialecticians consider this as very important. That is the fifth definition. That is Sat Viviktatvam Va Mithyatvam. It's consistent in being different and real. The Mithya Jnanam or Mithya or what you thought to be real before you got realization, before you got Aparakshanabhuti, what you earlier thought to be real is now understood to be different and distinct from the absolute reality. So a Jivan Mukta, looking at this world, he continues watching the same world. He is looking at the same world, which he thought to be real before he became a Jivan Mukta. But he's looking at it differently. And the fact is, he may be still living in this world. He may be interacting with this world. But in his behavior, in his interaction, frequently that awareness of that Jagat Mithyatvam or his conviction of Brahman is only Satyam, that conviction comes again and again. That such a Jivan Mukta continues living this world. He has to continue till his prarabdha karmas are worked out. But in the midst of all days, always there is this nagging awareness. The awareness will be always present in him. And this awareness will make him a better human being. Going beyond all these, I must say a few things. Jagan Mithyatvam is not just a philosophical construct. It has got a very deep message for our own times. Most of the time, people in modern time, they suffer because they superimpose permanence on what is essentially impermanent. And that creates a lot of anxieties and problems and worries. That's why, this Jagan Mithyatvam, the Advaita doctrine that Jagat is Mithya, has a deep psychological and spiritual value. It can help us to live in this world better. It can improve our psychological health. When we are facing a problem, it could be in the form of a doctor suddenly diagnosing the of cancer, or maybe some unfortunate tragic event like one of your near and dear ones passes away, or maybe the stock markets collapse, you lose a lot of money in the bank, in stock markets. All these things happen. And then people worry too much. People commit suicide. They take to drugs and alcohol, and people suffer from depression because they wrongly think that these problems are eternal. The problems like bad health, you may recover your health through treatment, that you forget. Instead, you think your ill health, bad health is a permanent situation. So also, when you lose your job, people when they lose their job, they get shocked. That put them in a state of psychological imbalance. And people take to drugs and alcohol very often to forget their worries, thinking that the solution, but actually worries will return with great force. All this happens because we superimpose permanence on what is essentially impermanent. This is an important thing to remember. So Mithyatvam has got this deep message of reminding us of the fact the world and all the problems, all the good and bad events are essentially only relative. They are bound to certain time conditions and certain circumstances. These circumstances change. They change from time to time. So an Advaitin can make use of this Jagan Mithyatvam doctrine as some kind of a tonic for healthy mind, for keeping the mind healthy and stable. Because we always mentioned earlier, we always attribute, but we do adhyasa, not only on sarpatvam, on didju, but we do adhyasa every day, every moment. When we are facing a problem, we think that problem is going to be there all the time. We should always remember, everything in this world is bound to change. Jagat here includes everything, our body, mind, complex, everything happens in this world. All these are bound to change. They belong to this umbrella category, Mithya, we call Maya, whatever it is, in functional form. So long as we remember the fact that everything in this world is bound to change, is impermanent, is a great consolation, is a great source of psychologically, it's a great help. But that's why Mattas Murvir Jnanam Apohanamcha. Gita says, Lord says, from me alone, memory, knowledge, and forgetfulness both come from the same source, divine source. So very often we forget this. So Mithyatvam, the doctrine of Mithyatvam frequently reminds us of something that we know intellectually, but we forget all the time. Every person knows that everything in this world is changing. Even a primary school student, a kindergarten student also knows that every day things change. Change is the part of empirical world, Jagat, so to speak, because it is Mithya. But we forget that. Our intellectual awareness doesn't help us at our emotional level. If a crematorium manager who's running a crematorium, who is seeing death every day, maybe every hour, he also somehow believes that death is something that can be avoided in life. So frequently, when there's slight problem, immediately we get a shock. So actually, in other words, Advaita is pure, simple common sense. Pure, simple, spiritual common sense. Jagat Mithyatvam is the crucial element in interpreting Advaita as pure common sense. What we know intellectually, what modern physics tells you, what everyone knows, but nobody is able to make use of that emotional life, Advaita reminds you again and again to make use of as a creative, constructive, positive, psychological tool. So going beyond its role as a very crucial element of Advaita philosophy, Advaita metaphysics, Jagat Mithyatvam, the doctrine that Jagat is impermanent, it is only relative, it is not eternal. It has got deep message for our times. Thank you, Namaskar. You are most welcome to ask questions. Thank you, Namaskar. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Pranamastu.
Thank you, Swamiji, for that very wonderful lecture on covering different aspects of Mithyatvam and how it is related to very important, how it is an important aspect in understanding Vedanta. Thank you for that. If you have any questions, audience. Okay, there's one question who says, when Brahman is Gunatita, where did turbulence arise? Because it is the Vikshepa which causes avidya. Please clarify, when there is nothing else other than Brahman, how did all this mess, Advaita turbulence, arise?
Yeah, the turbulence or difficulty arises in our absence of awareness of Brahma Satya. The idea that Brahman is the only reality. An intellectual conviction doesn't help in our life. Frequently, in the intellectual understanding doesn't help. Intellectual understanding is important. Paroksha Jnanam is important. But Paroksha Jnanam should be supported. It should become Aparoksha Jnanam. And we can translate Paroksha Jnanam into Aparoksha Jnanam only through Karma Yoga, doing something good, something noble, study Vedanta scriptures, think and contemplate. And slowly you find the idea that, well, I'm not just changing body, mind, complex. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
So as we evolve further, the idea that Brahman is only reality, it becomes more and more a fact of our experience and our life. There's an important point, remember. Advaita doctrine, the Brahman is only reality, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. This doctrine is helpful, no doubt. Remember, but as an intellectual concept or an idea, it's not enough. But it's a great way to begin our spiritual journey. Once a person develops the habit of reading, imbibing Advaitic ideas, then the conviction itself becomes stronger and stronger. Then it begins to influence, it begins to color his actions and thoughts and emotions. And then if you have a problem, if you find it's nature of the world. Somebody tells you that your friend has a health problem, a relative has a health problem, or this man has lost his job. Oh, it happens. He will get a job next month, perhaps. Next year, perhaps. If he has a health problem, it will be remedied, it will be cured, maybe through treatment. So you don't superimpose permanence on anything that is impermanent related to this world, either our body, our life, or anything. So the ability to focus our mind on something that is eternal and to take everything else now stride. You can laugh at your problems, but you should not become lazy. You should not become inactive, insensitive. You should work hard to solve your problems. You should work hard to find solutions to your problem. If you have lost a job, again, you should work hard to get another job. But at the same time, when the loss of job becomes a source of nagging pain, then you can tell your own mind, why should you worry? Losing job is part of life. In this impermanent world, nothing can be permanent. So Advaita, even as an intellectual idea, it is helpful. But if a person goes on continuing thinking and contemplating on this intellectual idea, and also along with that, he also practices karma yoga, and then slowly his mind also begins to evolve. His mind also begins to absorb this truth more and more. And that will have a positive, transformative effect on his life and his mind. That's how it happens.
Thank you, Swamiji, for that. I think Maheshji, your question is answered, but I think he is also has another question is I'm beginning there was only Brahman. Then from where did the first turbulence arise? I mean, first.
Yeah, really, the due to ignorance and ignorance avidya, first of all, avidya cannot come from anywhere. Avidya is essentially non-existent. So, avidya is anadi basanta. It has no beginning, but it has an end. That itself, this combination of anaditvam and the fact that it has no beginning, at the same time it will have an end. It shows essentially it has no real entity. Avidna vidyade iti avidya. If it's something that doesn't exist, then why should we talk about it? We realize that avidya doesn't exist only when we come out of it. We realize that Maya itself is not an absolute reality only when we come out of it. We understand the world is Mithya only when we come out of the wrong notion that this world is not Mithya. So this is an important point. Remember, where does it begin? We are trying to look at Advaita from the Dvaita pluralistic point of view. First of all, it is a matter of experience. It's a matter of, remember, Advaitis themselves tell you that yukti or logic or reasoning cannot find all answers in Advaita. As you evolve in spiritual life, as you move further towards experience, your questions cease to be questions. There are no more questions. Questions just merge into silence. That's it. Questions merge into silence. You may ask the question that why are the debates among Pandits? It's only to preserve the tradition. Debates cannot take you to experience. Intellectual ideas cannot take you to experience. In fact, all Vedanta books themselves tell you that the truth is beyond books. Then why are there books for? Books are necessary for us to study, for give a paroksha jnanam, intellectual idea, and then for sravanam, for listening, then thinking, and slowly this Advaitic idea goes deeper and deeper into a system, and then you find these questions merge into silence. Questions cease to be questions. Questions do not get an answer in Advaita. As you evolve further, these questions themselves disappear. Otherwise, you can see in the Brihadaranyaka and Chandogya Upanishad long debates. You find debates are important only to show us the limit of debates. Vacham agocharam, sarva pramana vadhi. These are the terms used in the Vedic tradition. Absolute reality, the absolute reality beyond all pramanas. Pramanas include books, thinking, pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, sabda, arthavat, anubhati. All pramanas are included. The absolute reality, Advaita Anubhuti, is beyond all pramanas. It is beyond names, beyond definitions.
Thank you, Swamiji. That was very well explained. They also are interested to know about your contact details. How can they contact you?
Okay, so you can, first of all, I can mention, I have my website. I'm the minister in charge of the Vedanta Society of Northern California, San Francisco, which is a San Francisco branch of Veda Moksha Mission, just founded by Swami Vivekananda in 1900. We are the first and oldest Hindu temple in the Western world, which was built in the year 1905. And my website address is sfvedanta.org. sfvedanta.org. See, can you, Bobby, can you write in your system my email address and telephone, website address? I'll put it in the they are putting my email address to Advaita in the chat. So we are giving, for the last several years, we have been giving in-person classes. And for the last 3 years after the Corona onset, we are giving online classes to the university students of Stanford, Hindu Students Association, Yoga Sutras. Now we have already started a traditional class interpreting various textbooks of Indian philosophical traditions every Sunday, 6 p.m. San Francisco time. That will be 6:30 a.m. in India. San Francisco, 6 p.m. in the evening. In India, Monday, 6:30 a.m. That is, our time is Sunday, 6 p.m. Indian time, Monday, 6:30 a.m. We are giving classes. It already started about a month ago. 3 classes already over. The fundamental text of Indian philosophy is an academic program attended by academics around the world. So you are most welcome to see our website, sfvedanta.org, and my email address is tattva@sfvedanta.org. Please, our devotee is writing it. Yeah, I'm very happy to be part of your great noble effort to remember the greatest name in Indian philosophical tradition, Shankaracharya. Okay, thank you and congratulations to everyone.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Swamiji.
Yeah.
Other one is, another question is, ignorance is natural. Ignorance is about the world and I. We do not question why we are ignorant about physics until we learn about it. Simply, ignorance is about I is also natural. Vedanta is a pramana to remove the ignorance. So,
okay, very good. Thank you. Now, ignorance is actually a very inaccurate translation of the Sanskrit word avidya. So, avidya, maya, and mithyatvam, all these are interlinked. So, ignorance is an English translation. I would rather use the word avidya or maya. As I mentioned, somebody mentioned, it is avarana and vikshepa. When we are under the power of ignorance or avidya, then the reality is concealed, and in its place, something that is totally unreal is superimposed. Avarana and vikshepa. So long as we are not aware of the true nature of the reality, a false nature, a false projection is superimposed on it. So this happens. So, and as we evolve in spiritual life through sadhana sadhushtaya sampatti, 4 fundamental disciplines which are universal. First of all, we must have a sense of what is real and what is not real. And then we must uphold what is real and disregard what is unreal. And the third stage, we have samadhi shirka sampatti. Naturally, we sense controlling the mind, then contentment, samadhyama, uparadhiti, diksha, saddha, samadhanam, all these, the third. And then mumukshutvam, a strong urge for spiritual enlightenment. So nitya anitya vastu viveka, ikhamutra phalabhoga viraga, samadhi sharka sambati mumukshutvam. Along with that, we should have a tendency to listen, to feed our mind with very spiritual ideas, to contemplate the meaning, sravanam, maranam, and then go deeper and deeper. Now remember, you may ask the question, where do we begin? There is a way to begin. We can begin our journey in Advaita right now, today. If we can do something good, karma yoga. Karma yoga is recommended by Shankaracharya and all Advaitins as a great beginning towards spiritual fitness of the mind, what we call chitta shuddhi. Through the practice of karma yoga, we accumulate good samskaras, healthy samskaras, and slowly our mind turns to higher and higher ideas. What we do will certainly have its effect on the mind. Mind will be purified through the practice of unselfishness and purity, self-discipline, and that will naturally take our mind to higher levels. Is again, we have to begin somewhere, doing something good and having a sense of higher value in life and upholding that higher value, that is Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. And when this happens, we will naturally disregard what is not really good for our life. This is how a person begins his journey in spiritual life.
We have one more question from Maheshji. He says that he uses the Einstein equation E is equal to mc square. So his question is, where did the first energy arise when everything is Mithya?
Yeah. The energy is a term that can be equated with the spiritual reality. So sometimes there are many modern thinkers who equate this energy as such. Energy in its different forms, but energy as such. In fact, in Vedanta, it's called Prajnanam Brahma. Prajnanam. Prajnanam is pure awareness. Awareness without being hooked into an object. Pure awareness. So energy can be equated to pure awareness. And that is everywhere, that is all pervading. From that awareness, different objects come into existence. They exist in that energy and they disappear. So that's why in the Drisya Viveka, Sistirnama Brahmarupi Satchidananda Vasturi Abdho Fena Diva Sarvanama Rupa Prasarana. Creation is compared to the emergence of waves and foams and drops of water and tsunamis perhaps in the ocean. So they emerge in the ocean, they exist for some time, and they merge back into the ocean, and again this happens. So creation in Vedanta is only a projection of energy in one particular form, but after maybe some millions of years, the created world goes back to its cause. So creation is, it's called Sarga, it's called the Puranic language. The creation is only projection of something. And this projected, created world may exist for some billions of years, perhaps. And then, well, can we ever imagine when did Big Bang begin? What was the before Big Bang? And if there's a big crunch that is going to happen, let us say, what will happen after that? So you have to go beyond the limitations of time and space, even to intellectually think of that. So in Vedantic tradition, these transmigratory cycles of creation, existence, and then dissolution, which means effect going back to cause, and again re-emergence. This cycle continues. That's the idea behind. I think Einstein's theory comes somewhere to explain the temporary, a small little movement in this transmigratory cycle. That's all we can say.
Yeah. Thank you. Another question is, in meditation, what do we focus on when you encounter so many thoughts and desires?
Yeah. In spiritual life, when you, first of all, we must have a positive counter focus. Normally, our mind is dragged into different things, different distractions in this world. Our eyes, our ears, sense of touch, sense of smell, sense of hearing, everything drags our mind into different things around this world. That's nature. That's why when you're watching the TV, when you are reading the newspaper, you have no problem. When you sit in your meditation room, all the demons in our own mind emerge in the form of conflicts and disturbance and so on. So, as a beginning, we must prepare for meditation, not in the meditation room, but outside, in our workplace. What we read, what we think, the kind of persons we associate with, all have an effect on our mental structure. So the first thing that is required is we must have a counter focus, some higher ideal, reading some good books, discussing some higher ideas. This will help us to create a right atmosphere, a right preparation for our mind. Before you go to meditation, why don't we listen to some devotional songs, some auspicious songs? If a person works 10 hours in the office and then go to home and then immediately starts meditation, he'll be only thinking of what happened to his office. But before that, one should try to listen or to some devotional music, or read some auspicious holy books, or discuss something that is auspicious, so that our mind will be brought to a higher level. And then we must try to meditate. If we start meditation all of a sudden, then all the thoughts and conflicts will emerge, and that will be a great distraction, great disturbance. So mind should be slowly lifted up by listening to devotional music or reading or things like that, preparatory disciplines.
Okay, thank you for that wonderful
Thank
text.
you. Okay.
Another question is, Atma does not exist in time. Time exists in Atma. So there is no room for causation in the sphere of Atma. So why does first, second, cause, effect, etc. would not carry any meaning in a principle such as Atma?
Okay. First of all, Atman doesn't exist in time. Atman is beyond time. Time is only in modern philosophy, if you consider time as a philosophical construct, time is itself non-definable. In our empirical life, we can think of time only as interval between two events. That's the only way to understand time. And past, present, and future are again the distinction, the line of demarcation between the past and the present, and between the present and future. Those lines of demarcations are only imaginary. So when you go deeper and deeper into your own inner soul, then you actually transcend time. So remember, Atman doesn't exist in time. Atman is beyond time. Atman is transcendental. This is an important point, remember. So if we should not get away with the impression, that's one of the views of the Indian materialists, that everything exists in time. We can only believe in what we perceive empirically, and everything is in terms of time, space, and causation. That's against Vedanta. Brahman or Atman is beyond time, space, and causation. Beyond time, space, and causation is transcendental. It's called Trigala Abadita and Avastha and Shadvikara Tita. Beyond six changes and beyond the distinction in terms of past, present, and future. That is what Atman is.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think I have one last question. Maheshi has loved your previous answers. So his one more question is, what is your answer to hard problems of consciousness, which is troubling all Western scientists like Chalmers?
Well, what really happened, I'm in this country for the last almost 11 years. And they have met and discussed with many intellectuals from different spheres. Many of them have taken some idea from some Vedantic books, and they have given some interpretations mixing psychology and physics. You see, in Vedanta, I tell you, because we are discussing Vedanta now. In Vedantic tradition, you can take up an idea from Vedantic books. But first of all, you should get the authentic interpretation of those concepts in Vedantic books. Then you can expound these ideas in your own language. This is an important point, remember. If you take one cherry picking, you take one idea from something, they project it and give it a very bombastic, high sounding term, and that's what is happening now. A lot of Vedantic ideas are selling like hotcakes, and especially in this age of information technology and internet. Many of these things are taken up, appropriated, like mindfulness, for example. Mindfulness is, I'm just giving an example as a part of my answer. Mindfulness is nothing but the name of a discourse that Buddha gave, Maha Sati Upattana Sutta or Sati Upattana Sutta, Smriti Upasthana Sutram or Maha Smriti Upasthana Sutram. It is actually a Buddha's discourse on how to remain in a state of perfect, permanent awareness, always to remain in a state of permanent awareness without being attached. That is a very great discipline. That is taken up and it is distorted, and it is like elastic, it is extended to all directions into something that Buddha will not recognize. They never mention Buddha's name. They never mention Buddha's name. Like that, consciousness. You take one little piece from, let us say, Ashtavakra Samhita or Yoga Vasishtha. There are great gems in these books. So what happens, even if you're totally uninitiated, not actually trained in the proper tradition, if you read a book, a translation, you find something interesting. And if you have enough power of language, you can make use of these concepts. So very often consciousness is nothing but awareness. What Aitareya Upanishad calls prajna. Prajna is consciousness. Prajna is nothing but awareness without being hooked into an object. Awareness, pure awareness, the universal cosmic awareness. So I don't normally get very much hooked into these controversial questions, because I believe that any attempt to equate some of the more profound Vedantic concepts to what is floating in the air here, it will be a betrayal, it will be treason to our Rishi Parampara, our great tradition. Vedanta is a precious spiritual heritage. Anyone can take a Vedanta and interpret and expound it, but he or she should do the minimum justice of being loyal to the tradition. For example, if I want to study and if I want to expound Christianity, I should first of all study the Bible, and I should first of all try to study the authentic textbooks in Christian theology, make an attempt to do that. Then I can give my own interpretation. But if I take one little piece, one quotation, then give my own interpretation, using my own vocabulary, it will not be proper. So many of our Vedantic ideas are being appropriated, taken out of context and interpreted. And this is happening now at all levels. Unfortunately, many scholars, many others, even from India, they are doing this, because it's just like in this age of publicity, this age of marketing, using latest techniques in marketing, YouTube, internet, this is happening. Anyway, so that is not part of our discussion or topic of discussion right now. Thank you very much for the wonderful questions and discussion. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you.
So we come to the end of this session, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter. And in the evening also we have a session, 6 Enquiries of Embody, Your Essential Nature of Wholeness by Richard Miller. Do join us then. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Namaskar.